March 15, 1944. Japanese Naval Intelligence Headquarters, Owada Communications Unit, Japan. Commander Etsuzo Kurihara stared at the intercepted transmission, his third cup of bitter tea growing cold on his desk. For the past 18 hours, he and his team of Japan's finest cryptanalysts had been attempting to decode what appeared to be American Marine Corps tactical communications from the Marshall Islands operation. The sounds coming through their receivers defied every analytical technique in their arsenal. Beshlo, da hetihi, da dikad. These weren't random noises. The pattern suggested structured military communication, timing that preceded American attacks, duration consistent with operational orders, frequency usage matching Marine Corps protocols. Yet the language itself remained impenetrable, unlike anything in their extensive files on Allied communication systems. Kurihara commanded one of the world's most sophisticated signals intelligence operations. The Owada facility, located 20 miles from Tokyo, employed 500 personnel operating 118 radio receivers and 20 direction finders. His cryptanalysts had successfully broken American diplomatic traffic, British naval communications, and multiple Army codes. They had penetrated the State Department's Purple Code before Pearl Harbor, providing Japan with crucial intelligence throughout the early war years. Yet these marine transmissions represented complete cryptographic failure. 3 years into the war, after breaking dozens of Allied codes, Japan's best minds couldn't decipher even basic patterns in these mysterious communications. What Kurihara didn't know, what no Japanese intelligence officer would understand until after the war, was that he was listening to the only unbroken code in modern military history. The story begins not in the Pacific, but in the American Southwest, where for centuries the Navajo people had preserved a language unlike any other on Earth. Diné Bizard, the Navajo language, belongs to the Athabascan language family, with approximately 170,000 speakers in 1940, confined almost entirely to the 27,000 square mile reservation spanning Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. The linguistic characteristics that would confound Japanese codebreakers had evolved over millennia. Navajo is fundamentally verb-centered, with actions described through complex prefix combinations that can number in the millions. The language employs 4 distinct tones, high, low, rising, and falling, that completely alter word meanings. A slight mispronunciation doesn't just change a word, it can render an entire sentence incomprehensible. The phonology includes sounds absent from Japanese, English, and most world languages, ejective stops where air explodes using the glottis, a voiceless lateral fricative that sounds like wind through teeth, glottalized sonorants and nasalized vowels. For Japanese speakers, trained in a language with just 5 vowel sounds, accurately hearing these phonemes was virtually impossible. Philip Johnston understood this linguistic fortress's military potential. Born in 1892 to a Protestant missionary on the Navajo reservation, Johnston grew up speaking Navajo fluently, one of fewer than 30 non-Navajos worldwide who could make that claim. By age 9, he was translating his father's sermons. By 15, he had travelled to Washington to translate for Navajo leaders meeting President Theodore Roosevelt. In December 1941, as America reeled from Pearl Harbor, Johnston read about Army units using Comanche speakers in Louisiana training exercises. The Choctaw had served in World War I, but those efforts were improvised and limited. Johnston envisioned something revolutionary, a formal military code based on Navajo that would be both unbreakable and practical for modern warfare. On February 28, 1942, Johnston presented his proposal to Major General Clayton Vogel at Camp Elliott near San Diego. The demonstration was remarkable. 4 Navajos from Los Angeles transmitted messages, while Marine officers timed them against standard procedures. The Navajo speakers completed transmission in 20 seconds versus 30 minutes for the M209 cipher machine. General Vogel authorized a pilot program. On May 4, 1942, 29 Navajo recruits were sworn in at Fort Wingate, New Mexico. These men, including Chester Nez, Carl Gorman, Lloyd Oliver, and John Bennerly, came from across the reservation. Some had attended boarding schools where speaking Navajo was forbidden and punished. Others were traditional sheep herders who rarely left their ancestral lands. At Camp Elliott, they worked in a locked, guarded building for 8 weeks, creating a military code within their native language. The task was monumental: develop terminology for concepts that didn't exist in Navajo, create an alphabet system, ensure memorability and expandability. They built the code through cultural logic. A submarine became beshlo, iron fish swimming beneath the surface. A battleship was lotso, whale, the ocean's largest creature. Fighter planes were da hetihi, hummingbirds darting through air. Bombers were jaysho, buzzards circling before descending. The alphabet required special creativity. Each letter needed multiple Navajo words to prevent frequency analysis. The letter E, most common in English, received 4 alternatives: tze, elk, ana, eye, tsegar, hare, ajar, ear. Code talkers would randomly alternate between options, destroying any patterns. They developed 211 initial terms, memorizing everything perfectly. No code books could risk capture. Chester Nez recalled, "We drilled endlessly. A mistake could cost lives. In our culture, words have power. Speaking correctly was sacred." The code's first test came at Guadalcanal in August 1942. 15 code talkers landed with the 1st Marine Division. The Japanese had expected the invasion, having decoded other Allied communications. But suddenly, Marine tactical messages became incomprehensible. At Japanese 8th Fleet headquarters in Rabaul, intelligence officers scrambled to understand these transmissions. Lieutenant Kazuo Yamada, educated at Stanford before the war, reported, "The sounds are structured like language, with consistent patterns. But it matches nothing. Not English, French, Dutch, Spanish, any Philippine dialect, any Chinese dialect. Completely alien." The Japanese response was systematic. They assigned top cryptanalysts, recorded hundreds of hours on wax cylinders, applied every analytical technique. They consulted university linguists, even Buddhist monks who studied ancient languages. Nothing worked. On November 8, 1942, code talker Chester Nez transmitted artillery coordinates that destroyed a Japanese machine gun nest. The 14-second transmission was intercepted but remained meaningless noise to Japanese operators. Within minutes, American shells fell precisely on target. Colonel Haruo Konuma, intelligence officer for the 17th Army, wrote, "The Americans have deployed a code that defeats every attempt. We can no longer anticipate attacks. We are fighting blind." Joe Kiyumiya, a Navajo soldier captured at Bataan in April 1942, became Japan's best hope for breaking the code. Though fluent in Navajo, he had no knowledge of the military code being developed. When Japanese cryptographers began intercepting Navajo transmissions, they brought Kiyumiya to the Ofuna Interrogation Center. They played him code talker recordings. Kiyumiya heard Navajo words, but in meaningless combinations. The turtle is attacking the iron fish. The hummingbird carries eggs. When he couldn't translate, interrogators accused him of lying. The torture escalated systematically over months: water torture, beatings, hanging by arms for hours. In winter 1943, they forced him to stand naked in snow until his feet froze to the ground. They starved him to 90 pounds, offering food for translations. Through everything, Kiyumiya could only repeat the truth. He understood the words, but not their military meaning. A Japanese intelligence report from May 1943 documented their frustration. The prisoner appears native to the mystery language but cannot comprehend messages. Assessment: either extraordinary resistance or enemy uses specialized code within native language requiring specific training. The second assessment was correct. Even fluent Navajo speakers couldn't understand without training. Kiyomiya survived 3.5 years of captivity. His inability to help convincing Japanese intelligence they faced something unprecedented. By late 1943, they largely abandoned attempts to decode Navajo transmissions. Success at Guadalcanal led to immediate expansion. Major General Alexander Vandergrift wrote, "The Navajo communicators have proven invaluable. Their transmissions are faster than any encoding device and absolutely secure." A formal code talker school at Camp Pendleton began processing classes every 8 weeks. By war's end, between 375 and 420 Navajo Marines had served as code talkers across all 6 Marine divisions. Training was unlike anything in Marine Corps history. Recruits practiced in soundproof booths while instructors introduced battlefield noises. They transmitted wearing gas masks while running through exhaustion. Thomas Begay, who enlisted at 15, described, "They pushed us beyond possible. Lives depended on our accuracy." The code evolved continuously. New technologies required new vocabulary. The atomic bomb became ayashi, metal egg. Kamikaze pilots were netaji, death wind. Each addition was logical to Navajo speakers, but incomprehensible to outsiders. By mid-1943, Japanese intelligence dedicated substantial resources to breaking the code. The Imperial Navy's 4th Section assigned 30 cryptanalysts exclusively to these transmissions. Captain Yoshiro Tanaka tried innovative approaches: musical analysis for tonal patterns, comparison to Native American recordings, consultation with scholars who studied in America. They developed special recording equipment to slow transmissions without distorting pitch. They created visual sound representations using oscilloscopes. They applied statistical analysis to sound frequencies and patterns. Lieutenant Commander Masao Yamada later revealed they identified certain patterns, probable call signs, correlation between message length and operation complexity, but without understanding words, these provided minimal value. Japanese forces received orders to capture Marine communication personnel alive. Rewards of 10,000 yen, 10 years' salary, were offered for code talker equipment or materials. Several close calls occurred, but no code talker was ever captured with their equipment intact. The Central Pacific Campaign demonstrated the code talkers' strategic importance. At Tarawa in November 1943, 6 code talkers maintained communications through 76 hours of brutal combat. Lloyd Oliver transmitted continuously for 48 hours, coordinating naval gunfire despite constant shelling. During the Marianas Campaign, 24 code talkers operated around the clock at Saipan. Lieutenant Commander Takashi Hirakawa had decoded conventional communications to anticipate the invasion. But once Marines landed, tactical intelligence disappeared. Colonel Takashi Saito noted, "Commanders felt abandoned without the intelligence they depended upon." At Peleliu, code talker Jimmy King transmitted for 6 hours during a counterattack after his partner was killed. He coordinated artillery from 3 battalions, sending 40 messages without error under direct fire. The battle for Iwo Jima represented the code talker's greatest contribution. Major Howard Connor coordinated the entire initial assault through Navajo code. 6 code talkers working in teams maintained continuous communication throughout the invasion's critical first 48 hours. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi had prepared for 2 years, constructing an underground fortress with 11 miles of tunnels. His defensive plan relied on intercepting American communications to trigger counterattacks. This plan failed completely. Over 48 hours, the 6 code talkers sent and received over 800 messages without error. They coordinated 30,000 Marines landing, naval gunfire from 100 ships, close air support, enemy positions, medical evacuations, supplies, and tactical orders, all while under constant fire. Major Connor later testified, "Were it not for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima." During the first 48 hours, I had 6 Navajo radio nets operating around the clock. They sent and received over 800 messages without an error. The entire operation was directed by Navajo Code. Colonel Shigeo Hayashi reported to Kuribayashi that American codes remained unbreakable. Artillery requests completed in 20 seconds through Navajo would have taken 30 minutes conventionally. The difference between destroying positions and losing them. At Okinawa, 35 code talkers coordinated the largest Pacific assault, 183,000 troops over 82 days. Japanese forces attempted jamming and voice mimicry, but couldn't reproduce Navajo's tonal qualities. Lieutenant Hiroshi Miyamoto's attempts to mimic Navajo sounded, according to code talker Alfred Newman, like someone gargling while trying to talk. On August 14, 1945, code talker Teddy Draper transmitted the war's most significant message. Nehema akedigini adotsenil, Japanese surrender. The message went through Navajo before conventional channels, a fitting end to the code talkers' war. After the war, American interrogators discovered the extent of Japanese efforts and complete failure. Lieutenant General Seizo Arisue, Japan's chief of intelligence, admitted, "We never broke the Marine Code. We broke Army codes, Air Force codes, diplomatic traffic, but the Marine Tactical Code was completely secure." Captain Yasuji Kawamoto was specific. "We recorded thousands of transmissions. Our best linguists studied them for 3 years. Nothing worked. It was our greatest cryptanalytic failure." In 1944, analysts had noted tonal patterns suggesting indigenous American languages. They requested German assistance, but wartime difficulties and German ignorance prevented breakthrough. Colonel Masao Yamada admitted, "Inability to read marine communications cost thousands of lives. Every marine operation after 1942 was mystery until it began." Major Hiroshi Tanaka, who survived Iwo Jima, described the psychological impact. "We couldn't understand their words. It made us feel primitive, defeated before battle began." The war's end didn't end the code talkers' burden. The program remained classified for potential Cold War use. Code talkers returned home unable to discuss their service with anyone. They returned to states denying them voting rights until 1948 in New Mexico and Arizona, 1957 in Utah. Hotels and restaurants refused them service. They were heroes who couldn't reveal their heroism. Chester Nez, last of the original 29 who died in 2014, wrote, "We were warriors who helped win the war but couldn't tell anyone. The burden was heavy. Many found healing through traditional ceremonies. The Enemy Way ceremony purified warriors from warfare's spiritual contamination." Dan Urke explained, "We had used our language to direct death. We needed it for healing. The ceremonies reminded us our language was sacred." In 1968, the program was declassified. The first recognition came in 1969 at a 4th Marine Division reunion. President Reagan declared August 14, 1982, as National Navajo Code Talkers Day. The most significant recognition came July 26, 2001, when President Bush presented Congressional Gold Medals to the original 29 in the Capitol Rotunda. Only 5 originals survived to attend. Bush declared, "Today we honor 29 Native Americans who gave their country a service only they could give." Chester Nez responded, "We were ordinary men given an extraordinary task. We used our sacred language to help win the war." While Navajos are most famous, 14 other tribes provided code talkers. Choctaw pioneered the concept in World War I. In World War II, 17 Comanche code talkers served in Europe, landing at D-Day. Hopi, Cherokee, Lakota, and others contributed their languages. The 2008 Code Talkers Recognition Act acknowledged all tribes. John Brown Jr. observed, "They told us our language was no good. Then they needed it to win the war." The code demonstrated Native American languages' sophistication. Code Talkers modernized Navajo in real time, creating grammatical constructions and adapting metaphors for military purposes. The agglutinative nature allowed complex ideas in single words. What required paragraphs in English became brief Navajo phrases. Dr. William Morgan noted, "They proved indigenous languages aren't primitive. They showed Navajo could express anything, from ceremonies to warfare." The Navajo Code introduced cultural encryption, security through linguistic barriers no mathematics could overcome. This influenced post-war intelligence operations. The concept remains relevant as quantum computing threatens mathematical encryption. Colonel David Hatch evaluated, "They achieved something unique, a code never broken, never compromised." It proved human linguistic capability could exceed mechanical encryption. In the 1980s, Japanese scholarship examined their failure. Professor Takeo Yoshikawa revealed 30 cryptanalysts worked exclusively on these transmissions for 2 years, consulting multiple universities. Captain Minoru Yamada revealed, "We knew it was Native American by late 1943, but couldn't identify which language." Lieutenant Commander Shigeru Fukumoto admitted, "Using a native language was so simple, so elegant, we never considered it." In the 1990s, photographer Kenji Kawano documented Code Talker survivors. His exhibitions in Tokyo and Hiroshima introduced Japanese audiences to the story. Code Talker Albert Smith told Japanese audiences, "We were both warriors. My language helped defeat you, but now helps us understand each other." In 2010, the Japanese Association of Intelligence Studies Symposium featured Admiral Hiroaki Abe. The Navajo Code represents perfect encryption. We had Asia's best code breakers, yet were completely defeated. Chester Nez, last of the original 29, died June 4, 2014. Today, only 2 Code Talkers survive from the approximately 400 who served. Thomas H. Begay and Peter MacDonald, not from the original 29, but crucial to the Code's operational success. Peter MacDonald continues speaking at age 96. "We showed America's strength comes from diversity. Our different languages and cultures make us stronger. The Navajo language, once suppressed, is now recognized as strategically important. Federal funding references the Code Talker story. Young Native Americans study ancestral languages with new pride." Dr. Jennifer Dennett-Dale observed, "Code Talkers transformed how Native Americans see themselves and how America sees Native Americans. They proved our languages aren't museum pieces, but living resources." The Navajo Code Talkers achieved military history's most remarkable feat, creating an unbreakable code that defied Japanese intelligence throughout World War II. Between 375 and 420 Navajo Marines served, transmitting tens of thousands of messages without error under combat conditions. The deeper significance lies in what they represented. American Indians used their native language, which the government had tried to eradicate, to defend that nation. Young men from marginalized communities provided capabilities sophisticated allies couldn't match. Japanese failure wasn't just tactical defeat, but fundamental blindness. They prepared for American technology and codes, not American diversity, languages and cultures they couldn't access. The empire proclaiming racial superiority was defeated partly by that diversity. Lieutenant General Arisue's admission that Japan never cracked the code used by the Marines acknowledges challenging an opponent whose strength came from incomprehensible sources. The Code Talkers embodied an America Japan's ideology couldn't accommodate. They proved America's greatest strength wasn't industrial capacity, but human diversity. Linguistic variety became strategic advantage. The Navajo language boarding schools tried to eliminate became key to Pacific victory. Today, as the last Code Talkers pass into history, their legacy endures. The language once forbidden is taught with pride. Native American veterans are recognized for serving at highest per capita rates, Diversity strengthening security is accepted doctrine. The voices speaking Navajo across Pacific battlefields carried a transcendent message. America's strength comes from many voices, peoples, languages united in purpose, but strengthened by differences. The unbroken code proves differences aren't weaknesses, but strengths to celebrate, preserve, and deploy for freedom. Japanese intelligence officers who failed understood the magnitude best. Their defeat recognized a truth transcending warfare. Some codes are unbreakable, not through mathematical complexity, but through human culture's infinite complexity itself. The Code Talkers sent messages Japan never decoded, but their greatest message was universal. Diversity brings strength, culture brings power, indigenous knowledge serves modern purposes. Young Navajo men using sacred language as weapon then instrument of peace proved forever that America's greatest encryption is diversity itself, unbreakable, because it emerges from limitless human experience and wisdom. The unbroken code remains unbroken, living in every native child speaking ancestral language with pride, every recognition that minority contributions strengthen identity, every understanding that differences make us stronger together. The Code Talkers proved our differences are strengths to celebrate, eternal proof that many voices, peoples, and languages, united yet diverse, create the unbreakable code of freedom itself.